both are doing pretty good.
I like
They
it.
just enjoy it.
Don't you intend it?
That age is
I'm
just
sorry?
fun, and
Yeah.
Yeah,
like.
I figured that.
Yeah.
It goes on. We're unmuted now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have to go to that. Lots of questions.
Okay.
8 AM.
Oh, boy.
And is there lots of there? Yeah, that was in. Oh, yeah.
Bright and early.
Oh, yeah. And then Sunday was Omaha for soccer.
Hey, it's better to be active and doing things.
Absolutely. I'm glad they have them.
I stopped down to the 5-year anniversary on Lincoln Premium this afternoon.
Oh, yeah, how was
They did it.
that? What's that?
That
Yeah,
was,
that was
that was
really
nice.
nice.
It was. Oh, you must have been later. I was there early and left fairly early, so. I didn't-
Was there a little bit later,
Mhm.
Wow, it's good.
about 4:30.
It was, I ran into a couple old guys that I used to work with at Cargill that are there now.
Sure.
The people I talked to are really excited about working there.
Yes.
That we have a good picture. And then I found out I knew some people there too.
Mhm.
Like kids like Pam at the schools. And parents.
That'd be an 80-inch TV. Wouldn't you think?
I need eyes in the back of my chest. My kids were convinced that I had those.
I never told your secrets.
The,
It's a black button on the side will turn it on.
This is
Yeah,
the
that-
button, just-
so then you can
You don't-
see-
That just turns the light on.
That's, yeah, so that'll turn it on.
If
Let
you
me
need-
know if you want to talk.
So you don't have to do
Yeah,
anything.
I got that.
Zoom.
And then voting is gonna be voice.
okay.
Are you trying to pull up the agenda?
Black to speak.
Oh.
Is being recorded as a whole.
That's my, yeah.
We didn't do voice, but
Where's the camera?
voice.
Right
I
there.
assume it's there.
That's right.
Hello.
Well, I better smile.
No, Reminds me to shut my phone.
Well, they're gonna get my profile, that's okay. Yeah, because I was looking for the video, so. Okay.
All right, good evening, everybody. Time is 7 o'clock. Welcome. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll go ahead and open up the regular city council meeting. Again, the time is 7 o'clock. The Opens Meeting Act is posted here on the wall next to the television. This time, we'll have roll call of the voice vote. So Tyler, go ahead.
Deacons?
Here.
Horner?
Here.
Ganem?
Present,
Lathrop?
Here.
Jensen?
Here?
Sukram?
Here,
Von Baron?
Yes.
Vaughn?
Here.
8 council members are present, Mayor.
Okay. Next is my comments, and first I'd just like to welcome everybody here to the Key Memorial Library for our city council meeting. Again, we'll be here temporarily as the second floor out of the municipal building is going through a renovation. And so I just want to thank the library for opening this up for this purpose, as well as our IT department for getting this all set up. It's quite an effort to get this room ready to go. And so just a couple of changes that we'll have during these meetings. We will have voice votes for all the items. Each council member has a kind of little light that they can turn on that'll let me know they are willing to speak or make a motion. Then I will call on you if I see your light on. And so we also have this kind of 360-degree camera set up in the middle that is able to, detect folks that are talking and is on YouTube right now. And so and then if you are a member of the public and want to speak or member of staff, I would just ask you please come sit up here in this chair at the end of the table. we'll be able to, you'll be able to talk to us that way and also get online on YouTube as well. So, I just, again, this is a lot of work to get this set up, and I just appreciate the city for, all the work that they did and the team to do this. So, I'd also like to recognize, we celebrated the 1-year anniversary of the Fremont Transit Program, which started September 7th of 2023. We had our first ride then, and we have given over 6,000 rides now throughout the year of the program. The top 3 destinations are senior support services, medical appointments, and shopping. And just want to thank again, Angie Olson's here, was instrumental in getting it started. Nick Hansen and Parks and Rec. We have a great team at the city. Dakota Busing is our transit manager, and a great team of drivers that are really working hard to serve the community well in this way and just provide a great service for folks that, you know, can't make it to these really critical needs that we have in their life. And so just want to recognize 1 year. There'll be many more years ahead, and appreciate all the efforts of those that helped get this started and see this really program take off. So I just want to thank those individuals. We'll move on to item 1, a motion to adopt the current agenda for the September 10th, 2024 regular meeting. Councilman Vaughn,
So moved.
Councilman Horner.
Second.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Horner,
Yes.
Canham,
Yes,
Lathrop.
Yes.
Jensen.
Yes.
Sugrum,
Yes.
Von Baron,
Yes.
Vaughn.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. All items in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda by council or staff?
Mr. Mayor, we have number 8, rolling the floor.
Number 8. Councilwoman Gannon.
well, that was the first one I was gonna ask to be pulled. But number 3 and number 10. Right now,
Councilman Von Baron.
Number 12, please.
Any items from the public to be removed? Okay. I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda items 2, 4 through 7, 9, 11, 13, and 14. Councilman Sugden.
I'll make that motion.
Councilman Jensen.
I'll second.
Go ahead, Tyler.
Canham,
yes,
Lathrop.
Yes.
Jensen.
Yes.
Sugrum,
Yes.
Von Baron,
Yes.
Vaughn.
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Horner.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, item 3 is to receive the report of the treasury. Our finance director to come forward with that.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, Jennifer Knapp, Director of Finance and Treasurer. This is the September Treasurer's Report. And overall, the city's account balance has decreased by $381,644, mainly due to we do 26 payrolls a year. So there are 2 months where we do 3 payrolls. And this last month was one of those months, and that is the majority of the difference month over month for the city. On the utility side, we also had 3 payrolls. And in addition, we had the payment of the Virginia Transformer project. One of the progress payments also occurred, and that makes up the majority of the difference there. Otherwise, we have our usual report that shows each of our banking entities and the different account numbers on the left-hand side and the balances, as well as listing our CD investments and then totals. And I am available to answer any questions.
no, yeah, you're doing a great job with keeping us informed. I was just gonna say with the results, it always appears that we're in sound financial positions. And I appreciate that as a city that we we are strong in our financial positions. I think that's really important. Obviously, just like at home, you don't want to spend more money than what we're bringing in. But I had a question, and I might go beyond what you're doing, is what do we do with the projects? The state legislature has passed some lid bills. And the projects that we have in our 2024 that we said we were going to do, if they're not done, that money rolls over to next year. And then
Are
if
you
that
talking about
money,
the ones this year to next year or
Yes,
next year
this-
to the year after?
2024 would roll over to 2025, is that right? For projects?
So we do a budget that is, we choose to do a budget for every 2 years.
Right, I realize that.
And every year we have a balanced budget, so we have the expenses we expect. And the tax revenues to make sure that we're keeping what we're asking of our constituents
Right.
as low as possible. We do have capital projects that we did not finish. And so we are, it will be up to the council as we bring projects forward to have you review and approve them. And we will indicate whether they were budgeted this year or next.
Okay,
And certainly, some of our, higher balances we have right now is because we had budgeted for those projects. That is correct.
okay, thank you.
So you're saying then well, that makes sense, because any projects that we didn't get done, we didn't spend the money.
Right,
So the
Right.
money's still
yeah,
there.
thinking
Okay.
about the police station
Okay.
and fire station.
And when does our lid kick in? The next budget cycle for us, right? Okay. So we're good yet.
We are still good.
Well, I foresee us
And-
having some challenges down the line as our needs increase. And we have to decrease our spending by statute, so it should be interesting.
And later in the agenda, we'll talk a little bit more about
I
that.
saw that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank
Any
you for
other
clarifying.
questions?
Thank you. Anybody from the public here to speak on this? Okay, I take a motion to receive the report of the treasury, Councilman Benson,
I'll make the motion to receive the treasury report.
Councilman Horner,
I'll second.
Jensen,
Yes.
Sukram,
Yes.
Von Baron,
Yes.
Vaughn.
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Horner,
Yes.
Hannah,
Yes,
Lathrop.
yes,
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
moving on to item 8 is a motion approving the request from the Center for Rural Affairs, Women in Business for a waiver of use of the city auditorium, October 8th, 2024. And Nick Hansen's here at Parks and Rec. Perfect timing, sir. I saw you over there hiding.
That wasn't my fault, it was practice. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Bolton City Council. This is brought to you because we had our Parks Board meeting last night. They actually sat and discussed this quite a bit here. They wanted to recommend a 50% reduction of the total fee of the $1,050. In the past, we've kind of just covered that cleaning fee. We had great discussion of saying and maybe it should just be more of a 50% if they're still asking, because there's a setup and an actual day. So it just helps cover some of that cost back. CRA, they actually asked to have a sponsorship. We can't give a sponsorship, so we kind of redirected them to a reduced application fee. This is our Parks Board recommendation is the 50%. But obviously you guys can change it but that's their recommendation.
Any questions for Mr. Hansen?
Was that yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
all right, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt here, but Nick, I think we talked about this too, because if we're gonna do waivers, it should be in our policy. We did fee structures not too long ago. Nowhere did we talk about waivers and nonprofits or not nonprofits. I mean, you might have prom night or something that's not a nonprofit group. But I just think it should be addressed in the policy because there are nonprofits. And we keep getting everyone sometimes for waivers if they know to fill out the waiver form. And I just think if we have a set policy, of nonprofits would be 50%, fine. But it's always coming back to us. And that kind of leads to our policy that we set downtown. Like we said, 11 o'clock, events will end. We keep getting asked for waivers. You know, either we change that time and have a set time so Tyler can say, I'm sorry, you know, we have to end at midnight. No ands, ifs, or buts. But we're constantly getting the waiver request. I'm not sure how you all feel about it. But I think if we set a policy, that policy is to give us guidelines and to follow that. So in the same with this waivering, I just think in some instances, you might want to consider the prom night or the high school activities. But in most instances, nonprofits should have the same way to be treated. Not, you're free this time except for cleanup, or 50% this time. Does that make sense?
I
I'm
mean,
trying to say,
it does. In our fee waiver reduction application, there is rules that you have to follow. Technically, it says no weekend events will be considered, but yet we have weekend events that have been considered in the past, as in
I know.
prom or homecoming, like but that's the precedent. Do you want to set that? Do you want to waive 50%? That's their recommendation. You guys can either take that recommendation or just say no fee waived at all, like that's either way.
Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, Sally was obviously reading my thoughts as she was speaking, and that was my question, because given to what we've discussed on the downtown hours and those kinds of things. We kind of came to the point of either we had a policy or we didn't, and that was my question when I saw this, so and I don't know, is there a policy, maybe the application fills in some of those blanks, but it just seems like it would be good to have a policy and just say, these are our criterion and go from there.
There's no policy in for nonprofits. There's probably 7 things that we look at, like no weddings, no quinceañeras, no private events. But if you're calling it a nonprofit, there's nothing that states it in there, but we can always put it in there. However we want to do it.
Councilman Warner.
Yeah, Nick, listening to Councilman Ganem, I can appreciate very much the concern that she's got. I share that somewhat. One thought I have had sitting there thinking about this is on a group like this, do you guys have a feel for how many people are coming out of town from out of town and how many people are staying for this? Is this a one-night event?
This is a one-night event. I don't know how many people are, we usually.
We
just
don't
say how
know
many
what
people
the
are
attendance
coming.
would be or anything.
They might have an attendance. We usually ask that question.
I didn't see that in there. Talk about bringing
yeah.
surrounding cities. Did I miss it?
Mhm.
No, we're not sure how many people would actually, we actually have that on.
Okay. Well, my thought was, if we've got people coming into town, that's a good thing. I certainly don't mind supporting some sort of a waiver on something like this, but at what point you got a fee, at what point do you stop waiving it and everything? It's kind of like who pays and who doesn't. I certainly don't want to be up here trying to make that judgment every time. I know, so I guess, I would be in favor of trying to come up with something that everybody can live with. We need to have that. We've got costs that needs to get covered. And so that's all we're trying to do, I would assume, is when we come up with these fees.
This is something that the city and the council before have dealt with, and I remember, it used to be just, I think, post-prom. And then what happened was, we had requests come forward and we started to, give a few reductions. And here we are essentially, so, I think having a policy, yes, is appropriate. It's a matter of, if you give them one to one group and everyone else is lining up too, so. Yeah.
Maybe we need to revisit.
Well, since the topic is here and we're talking about it. And we're kind of hitting the reset button, so to speak. I think maybe a little more appropriate than that level of discount. I didn't do the math, would be just a 50%. And that doesn't set the bar so high or so low that equally deserving nonprofits and the like wouldn't be barred entry. It would be still relatively affordable. We cover our cost for cleaning and the utilities, that kind of thing, and we're not making a profit off of it. And we're being conducive to nonprofits in the area. So I would make that motion that we would amend to reduce it by 50%.
Okay. And then I would just say, we could go back to your board and you review it and maybe come back with a policy that you agree with.
Yes, please.
That can. Councilman Warner?
Just so we're not getting the cart ahead of the horse, I think we still need to do some public comment on this.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions for Nick? Okay, any comments from the public on this? Okay. Councilman Vaughn has a motion for the 50% reduction. Councilman Horner?
I'll second it.
Horner,
Yes.
Hannah,
Yes.
Lathrop,
Yes.
Jensen.
Yes.
Studo,
Yes.
Von Baron,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 10 is to receive the local option economic development fund quarterly report. We have Angie Olson here to give that report.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Angie Olson, Plan Administrator. This item is the quarterly report of the Local Option Economic Development Fund. And there's a report attached for all previous projects. And little summary in your staff report. I did want to highlight, I went through some of the numbers. I had a question about the size of businesses that this fund is helping. And so in reviewing the current contracts, not any that have been completed, but the ones that are current, we've got about small that would be considered 5 businesses that would be considered small businesses. So 100 or fewer employees, 2 that are medium size and 2 that are large. Those are Holstone and Costco or the large organizations. But just a note that it's kind of highlighting a variety of sizes. And when it gets down to the various smaller ones, it's interesting because we have had daycares. We've had the brewery downtown and a host of other types, all the way up to manufacturing. So lots of a good variety of different businesses. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gannon.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your overview with that, and it's done a lot of good in bringing a lot of businesses to us. I did have a question on what's the impact of the RTG medical sale? What kind of impact will that have?
Sure. So that was in the paper last week. And so, and of course, the city subscribers to the Tribune. So we did note that and reached out to legal, and they are working to find out answers. If I recall in the article, that wasn't something that RTG had released yet. So as the sale moves forward, I'll be working with legal to find out what the terms of that are, but we don't know those right now.
Okay.
Now, if they are not in compliance with the contract, then we'll work with legal on next steps, which would be recouping a portion of the funds. And I did send out, when I sent the email out to the group last week, I believe they are at, see, their balance for the economic development loan is $240,000 right now. They are up for measurement again in October. So something to consider is that from October of 2023 to October of 2024, they'll be measured. They did reduce staffing over the summer, so I don't know how that will impact it. But they could, there's a chance they still could comply with that, depending on how many staff members they've had that past year. But we will just continue to work with legal, the committees, the Lorton, the Park, and then bring everything to council as well.
Hey, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, just a question on this Infinite 8. It goes back to 2018, I believe, and it's in default. Is there a, what? it's been there for a while. Is there a chance of recovering funds or where are we standing with that?
So, as far as recovering funds, my best guess is no, only because that was pre-me, but we have been working on it since. It's been turned over to legal and turned over to collections, so, we are pursuing collections on it, but it hasn't been resolved yet, but it is something they're still working on. Every great once in a while, I'll, have to get an update on it, but, nothing's been completely resolved yet.
Yes, thank you.
Councilman Horner?
Yeah, just real quick, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to bring up, I emailed, Angie, I just find it curious, there's nothing for 2023. I mean, there were no requests. It looks like there were no grants given, so there were no requests for 2023, and so far only one for 2024. I just hope that folks know it's there and know that there are funds available so that it can be used for what it was intended for.
Yeah, I think that's a good point and something, we're always trying to get the word out. I will say there are a lot of people that are aware. We had an intake form, which is kind of a precursor to an application recently. They were not an eligible business. So we have some interest, but they don't always fit the bill to be eligible with the plan and the statute. But there is a lot of interest. There's also a lot of interest, but then not always an application that is completed. We work with GFDC on helping businesses that maybe need help with the business plan. There's some of those components. And then I'm also working on recreating the application to make it maybe a little bit more seamless and a little bit more easy to get through. I think in the past we have had, larger businesses filling it out. They have staff, they have people that understand everything that's needed. And now as we get more smaller businesses applying, they don't have the extra staff to help with that. So if we can make it easier and make more sense, then that I think will improve receiving applications. I always like to say that, if we're continuing to see hiccups in the application, I can't blame the applicants, because if it's recurring pattern, there's something wrong there. And I think that doing a revamp of that will help.
All right.
Councilman Jensen?
Yeah, to Angie's point and Blair's question, I'm on the law committee, and that's what we've been getting is people that are not eligible. Either they're asking for way more money than they really need, or they're not going to create as many jobs as are required. It's just we haven't had a whole lot to do lately, have we? It's just been slow right now.
Any other questions? Thank you for that report. Anybody here from the public to speak on this item?
Fred Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street. I want to thank the council for pulling this item tonight. I want to thank them for the questions that have been asked in regards to Infinite 8 and the RTG item as well. Those were my concerns. What I didn't hear and what I would have hoped to have heard more of relative to this, and maybe it should be reflected on the report. But when it comes to the Infinite 8 Institute, the report indicates that they're 5 years in default, but it doesn't indicate that we actually have it under litigation. And it doesn't tell us where we are in litigation since this started 5 years ago and they absconded with $250,000 about. So I guess I would think maybe the report could be more informative in that regard. I assume this will stay on the report until this item is rendered complete, at which time maybe it would be removed if we recover our funds. With regards to the RTG item, I'm interested in understanding what the date of issuance was from the city's perspective. When I look back at this particular original grant, it was February 26th of 2019 when the city council took action on this. The commitment for employees was 5 years. In February, that would be expired. So if that's true, is this particular item complete? I assume that's what legal is maybe looking at in that regard. if there was an extension or a later date than February 26th, then that would be helpful to know. And I assume legal would be investigating that as well. But to the extent that the February 26, 2019 date is intact, then if they held the jobs necessary for 5 years as of February, I'm not sure what this has to do with their sale. So it'd be interesting to hear what legal has to say about that. And perhaps some of those things could be noted on the report to put more depth in what the public gets to see.
Anybody else here to speak on this item? Okay, any additional comments from council? Councilman Von Baron.
Just observation and I'm, you have to do a lot of skimming on a report like this. It's not that it's a bad report, there's just not a lot of detail, but I was just looking at the amount of money that we have spent per job on some of these projects. The thing in the last few months, I just went back and I was interested in, I think I've made the comment previously about the average base hourly wage in Fremont. You can find a lot of sources that say it's $6 less than the state average or whatever. But if you take a pretty good swag of the estimates that are out there, Fremont is somewhere probably under a couple dollars an hour under the state average. I mean, there's one site that says the average Fremont worker earns probably 80% of the state average. And so, you know, I know you're aware of this on the local team, and we've just approved one, I think, with the animal nutrition company that looked like it was a very good investment. But the challenge is, are we using this money to the best benefit? I just pulled some of the more expensive projects, and we spent on basically 5 projects ranging from $20,000 to $50,000 per employee. We invested just under 1.2 million, roughly $42,000 per job. And about 1/3 of those, if you adjust them, would appear to earn less than the Nebraska average. So that's, you know, that's swag. That's what you can kind of extrapolate. So that may or may not be exactly accurate, but I guess the overall request would be, can we develop a metric that gives us some indication of how well we're investing these funds? Because just adding jobs doesn't necessarily equate to prosperity. They have to be jobs at a certain wage scale, certain level of permanence. I'm not asking for rocket science, but it would be nice to have some good way of measuring whether these investments are in fact paying back to the community. Just from what we see, there's no way to show that. And I think it would be useful to know that we're spending the funds well. So, for what it's worth.
Councilman Jensen.
I just, Councilman Von Baron's point, that is part of the metrics of it. The jobs have to make X dollars an hour. They have to include some form of benefits. That's part of the matrix of the LORT and the CART committees, is they have to have jobs that are within a certain wage scale and a relatively high one.
So are those banded, for example, against the state average? How do you?
That would be more of a question for Angie than for me. I don't know exactly how it's.
It'd just be useful to understand that in most cases, we probably do a pretty good job, but I think there are a couple of cases you could say, yeah, maybe we could have done better.
And there were some small projects that maybe that's why we're getting less. There've been some small projects, like you're saying, that we're spending an awful lot of money for a very few number of jobs that, and you know, that could be some of the slowdown in the traffic over there, is that we're scrutinizing that a little closer.
Yeah, and in a number of cases, those jobs weren't even retained. We spent it all, and there are a couple of cases where nothing was retained. So it's just a request, if we can clarify how we measure that would be very useful, I think.
Councilman Warner.
Yeah, one of the things that I think we all have to keep in mind, and I'm not sure, I haven't looked at this in Nebraska. I actually looked at this in another state before. County seats tend to have on average lower paying jobs than the rest of the state. When compared, because you got a lot of the services here. And when those are factored in, and a lot of those services aren't high paying jobs. So that does tend to put a little bit of a extra burden and extra weight on that status of being a county seat. I don't know how that works out in Nebraska. It's been years since I've looked at it. I know in Florida and I know in Kansas, that tends to be a trend for county seats and even for government, other centers of government. That wages and everything tend to trend down a little bit on average. Not that that's any excuse, but that could be part of the explanation for why Fremont tends to have a little bit lower than the rest of than the state average. But I think if you went out and looked at and compared them to other county seats, I don't know what you'd find. Maybe Fremont is actually low, but I think that would be a better comparison to really understand where we're at than to the state average. That would be my opinion.
Councilman Vaughn?
Yeah, a couple different things. Perhaps it was overlooked, but maybe the center column talks about dollars per job created. And so that does give you some sort of a context or reference for the amount of money spent versus, how many jobs were created and at what cost. The other difficult part for me, and I assume others, is the changing landscape of economics in this country and what is a good return on an investment 5 years ago, 10 years ago compared to now, and things are just moving at such a rapid pace. It's really hard to kind of put a finger on that. I don't disagree with you in that regard. I do see that there are some that are better than others, but it's awful hard for me to gauge and make a lot of assumptions with this length of history and the amount of change and wages.
The ones that I
we've
picked, I did adjust for inflation.
seen. Yeah.
So,
Councilwoman Lathrop. Sorry.
I just wanted to point out too, that there is a daycare on here that we helped out, and obviously a daycare facility maybe isn't gonna pay the high wages, because if they did, nobody would be able to afford daycare, especially right now when the price of daycare is so astronomical. So it is also important to help those with maybe not as many employees and not as high paying. So I think we need to look at that as well in the overall picture.
Okay, let's see, Councilman Jensen?
If there's no further discussion, I'll make the motion to receive the local election economic report.
Councilwoman Gannon?
I'll second.
Lathrop,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Sukram,
Yes.
Von Baron,
yes,
Vaughn,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Warner,
Yes.
Ganem.
Yes,
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 12 is to receive the statements of operation and net position as of July 2024, and we'll have a report from our finance director.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, Jennifer Knapp, Finance Director. I've divided these reports into one for the Department of Utilities and one for the city side. If I start with the Department of Utilities, and there'll be more on this as well in a bit with the report that we got from the S&P Global. But overall, we are looking sound. On the reports where it says change in net position, that means net income. Gas has fluctuated greatly over the last couple of years, mainly because the price of gas has dropped from $9 down to $3-ish. In addition, and because we pass that through and we do kind of a cost plus, it makes it very difficult to forecast. So the price is lower, so our revenues and our billings are lower. Electric, we're seeing the shift to fueling with coal. Our our fuel cost has dropped again because in the beginning of last fiscal year, when there was a strike with the rail, we were having to use gas to fuel, and it was also very expensive gas. So that we didn't overburden our constituents and have high electric bills. We do a 12-month rolling average so that it doesn't fluctuate greatly. And what that does is in August of last year, the fuel cost adjustment was at 0.007771. And now it is half that at 0.003717. What this means is it pushed a little of the revenue into this fiscal. But what I do think is important to, when you analyze the electric costs, is that our costs are increasing at a higher rate than our revenues are increasing. And I think that we'll get some good insights when we do the electric rate study. On sewer, our wastewater treatment plant is doing well. We are producing the natural gas that we intended to produce. However, the credits that we thought we would earn from that natural gas from the federal government just haven't materialized as large as what we had budgeted, what we thought we'd get. In addition, the load that we're getting from our industrial customers is lower. And so we don't have as much revenues as what we had budgeted. However, when you look at the other big cost in the sewer is our year-over-year costs are up because we issued debt to pay for those updates. So year-over-year, the debt is much, the cost to service that debt is higher than the prior year. But when you look at the budget, you knew exactly what that was going to be. So it's in line with budget, if that makes sense. And revenues are up because we increased our rates. And then finally on water, water is down in both costs and revenue because we've had a lot of rain. And that's really the story there. Does anyone have any questions on the DU report?
Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, just primarily, occupation tax revenues, Jennifer, I know we've relied on those to soften the impact property taxes. Can you give us an idea where those are? Is that the sales tax number that you quote?
So what I was speaking about just previously was just the Department of Utility side.
Okay.
But on the, let me table that
sorry.
question for just a second.
Yeah, I latched on.
Yeah, that's
You were
okay.
ahead.
Are there any other questions on the Department of Utilities?
Councilman Warner.
Just one quick one. Why haven't the credits materialized that we thought we were gonna get? Do we know?
I think the rules changed.
It's a different type of credit that we're eligible for. We didn't qualify for the ones that could be sold in California, from what I understand. That was the thought, was what they classify our renewable gas as. They didn't, we didn't qualify for those that we originally thought when we put the plant in.
Okay.
I still think it's cool though that our sewer plant is producing natural gas and we're using it. I think that's
And-
pretty nice.
And to speak to that, that is a benefit when we talk to other companies that want to come into Fremont, is that is it's a renewable source, and everybody's looking for renewable energy sources.
Any other questions on Department of Utilities? Okay, on the city side, we look really good. Part of the reason we look good, though, is as you look through the report, we have large capital items that we haven't done yet. We're building a fire station, a police station, a multi-use building. In addition, we have some lingering costs from the runway rehab project. Those total, 5.4 when you look at fire and police, the multi-use facility and the other street projects that we just couldn't get all of them done is another 6.6 million. And the runway rehab is 2.4 million. I point those out because, and when you look at the property year-to-date property taxes we've taken in, it's much lower than what we've budgeted, and it's because they come in big chunks, right? And so we'll get another, hopefully, big chunk in here at the end of the fiscal. So we do see millions of dollars of swing from a cash flow perspective, which is why the council so smartly encourages the city and requires the city to hold a certain amount of operational costs, a certain number of months, so that we can make sure that we cover those swings from a cash flow perspective. We do have some lower than prior year on lodging taxes. Food and beverage is up slightly. And we did get some increase because of grants that we've received. But overall, from a budget spend, the teams have done well. To answer your question, we've got the property tax, and which we'll talk about here in another agenda item, of course, because we're looking at whether or not we want to take the growth. And so I've analyzed what we had budgeted for property tax levy and what we had also planned in for year 2. And then the question on whether we want to amend that to take for growth. So we did budget for year 2 a bit of growth in the property tax levy. However, the amount of growth that we've seen in the city, along with what we budgeted, the overall levy, if we left it as budgeted, will drop a bit. And as far as occupation, can you repeat your occupation tax question?
Well, that was the question, because I believe we've relied on the occupation taxes to soften or offset some of our property tax ask. And so I was just curious, maybe I misunderstood that, but I was just curious if the occupation tax, if there was going to be that offset, or whether we were going to have to resort potentially to an increase in property taxes.
It's the business line on your report.
I mean,
Business taxes up 3.5% with decreases in lodging at 9.5. So yes, we have received an increase in occupation business.
So it's,
This is just a slight increase. They offset each other because the hotel tax, while it's at 4%, the amount that comes in is generally speaking much less than what we get in the food and beverage tax.
so the terminology is business tax, not occupation, as we
For the
stated.
purposes of this report, it's
Okay.
they're lumped together
Thank you.
as the business. That might be something that, you know, I think Jen mentioned that she's not necessarily married to this.
Mhm.
The way that this
Sure.
report is formatted, so perhaps that might be something that we kind of put a note in to make that change.
Yeah.
Make it
yeah,
more apparent.
are there any questions on the city reports? It is a lot of information. I know that it's been since April when we did the audit that we brought financial reporting. We are hoping to bring you reports every quarter going forward. And any feedback you want to provide, I'm very open to. And I would say the flow of the reports are slightly different between the city and the DU. And if you have a preference, let me know. I want to make sure that it's easy to absorb and it's transparent and that it answers the questions you all want, hopefully, before you ask them.
Well, I want to thank you for putting this together. I mean, this is a very thorough report with, financial information mid-year that's not the audit or budget, which, is really pertinent to decision making, and especially, you know, in the middle of cycles like we are right now. So I just appreciate your work on this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions? Anybody from the public here to speak on this?
Order 2318 East Fifth Street. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to this. Again, pleased that this was pulled from consent agenda. This is one of those items, based on the discussion that you have and the content of what's in this material, that I truly believe is not routine and perfunctory, and therefore it really didn't belong on the consent agenda in the first place. And I'd like to start by stating that. This is a precursor of information necessary for your analysis of the budget. It's necessary for the public to understand what's inherent in this report as you work into the budget. I wrote myself a note that I didn't hesitate to even share, but it was one of those that said, if this item doesn't get pulled from the agenda, of course, I would have pulled it anyway, but if it doesn't get, I would have been in contact with city council members to see if they could explain this report to me in some detail, because this is the opportunity for you to ask questions and find out what it says. And I appreciate the fact that staff explains. That's what it's all about, and that's transparent government. That's why I don't feel that this really belonged on consent in the first place. Couple of concerns that I have as you're going into this budget cycle, and I want to get in early on behalf of the public. The citizens of Fremont and businesses and residents alike have been reeling for the last several years with regards to property assessed value increases, which brings the city additional funds. I want you to keep that in the back of your mind as you start through your budget process to make sure that you recognize that that's happening when you look at the levies that you want to put in for the next budget cycle. And in that regard, I guess, there's been some discussion about the capital items that have been not completed yet. They're in the current budget, but not completed. And there are expenditures in some departments that are overrunning currently. My question to you as council members and to staff is, in these that are overrunning, do you intend to bring those back into alignment with the budget before the budget cycle is done at the end of September? You're at 10 months, I think, in this report, so you've got a couple months to shave those down. If not, is the assumption that you have that if you overrun, it's okay? We'll take it out of reserves. What does the council intend to do with those that are currently over budget? In particular, I would note that legal expense is one of those that's over budget. I've brought to this council before the fact that overrunning legal expense has some consequences and it needs to be monitored. So to the extent that there are others that are overrunning, again, I would admonish what's going to happen as you prepare for the next budget cycle. And are you, for the capital programs that have not yet been affected, will you be rebudgeting for those in your new budget and expecting the new levy to cover the items that were budgeted and revenues collected and put in your coffers already? Or how will you handle that so as to not collect in your new property tax assessment something that you've already collected over these 2 years, just not built and put in the reserves? So I just ask that you take a look at some of those items to make sure that the public and yourself understand what those things mean, and that we're giving as much deference to the public as possible with regards to property tax relief. I know Councilman Gammons raised that we'll be under some lids, and that will maybe present a challenge. But at the same time, we have tens of millions of dollars in reserve, close to it, and we have done that for a number of years. And one of the ways that happens is you over budget, underspend, and add to the reserve. It's been going on since I was on council. We're now spending some of it on capital programs, but we need to make sure that we're taking that into account as you set your new budgets and decide to set the tax levies to collect revenues associated with it. Don't forget what you've already collected. Thank you.
Anybody else here to speak on this? Any additional comments from the council on this item? Councilman Von Baron?
Would be just curious as how we handle the budget overages between now and the end of the fiscal year.
Jennifer Knapp, Finance Director. So we went through with every department and we did a budget review. And we went through every line item and we went through all of their capital expenditures. And as you are aware, we approved an overall budget, a balanced budget that has revenues coming in and expenses and capital expenses. And those are our lids and we cannot go over that amount. We are not over that amount. We do have some items, some expenditures that have been higher than forecast as needs arise or emergencies happen or repairs are needed. And we've had other ones that are lower. And so we have kept to our budget and we will continue to keep to our budget. If that makes sense.
But what I was asking about primarily individual departmental budgets, if they go over, how do you compensate for that? Do you bring them back into line by the end of the year? Do you bring in supplemental funds?
We
How
make
do you-
sure that if someone's requesting something that wasn't in their budget,
Mhm.
we literally say, okay, what aren't we gonna spend? To make sure that if we're gonna do a repair on this street, as an example, that we've decided that that's more important than a different street. And we make sure that we're keeping to the total and making sure that we, in every item that we bring to you all, we know, is it in budget? Is it over budget? Was it not budgeted? And then we make sure that we understand what we're not gonna spend if we're gonna do this.
So by the end of the year, and I'm evidently the slow kid on this one, but by the end of the year, then a given budget will be brought back in. If it's over budget right now, it will be expected to decrease expenditures in the next 2 months.
No, what I'm saying is, there were already expenditures that they were going to spend that they're not spending. So we've kept it at or below the entire time. So if someone's gonna forecast they were gonna spend $1 million on X, and they come to council mid-year or whatever and say, we're gonna spend 2 million here instead, then we say, okay, what 2 million are you not gonna spend? To make sure that we're keeping it in line. I think we run a tight ship.
Thank you.
Any comments, Jody?
No, the overall concept is when the council approves the budget, they approve the appropriation bill, which is a $1 amount that covers the city and the utilities. When you're approving a budget, you're not necessarily saying, you know, Department A has $1 million, Department B has $2 million. It's the overall total line is what the council approves. And for every project that maybe has a bit of a runover or something, there's another project that doesn't get done. You know, you might be aware that we've not had until recently all of our firefighter positions filled. The same with the police positions they've been running quite short here lately as well. All of those savings help to offset some of those unbudgeted for items that come up during the year. And we have to do that during the year, or, I mean, we would not be able to continue to provide services if we said to a department, sorry, you've reached your budget limit.
Okay.
You know, that grass that needs mowing, that'll have to wait because for your department, we can't do that.
Thank you.
Councilman Warner?
This is just a question that I don't know that you'd necessarily be able to immediately answer, but I'm just curious I mean, in other businesses that I've looked at, I've dealt with budgets, et cetera, and I know in certain months you're gonna be over budget. And then the following month, whenever revenues and expenses catch up, because you might have had a slug of expenses come in. And then all of a sudden, the revenue balances out the following month, and all of a sudden, I'm 108% above budget where I'm supposed to be for that 1 month, but the next following month, all of a sudden, I realize some revenues, and all of a sudden now I'm looking like I'm really doing really well that month, when in fact, I haven't really changed that much. How much of that can we be seeing right now?
Oh,
I
a
mean,
lot. I look at property taxes. If you look at, I mean, we're sitting at, this was through P10 and we only have 2/3 of our property tax in, and that's because people pay their property tax in.
Bottom line though,
P10s.
right now, we're operating in general under budget.
We are overall, yeah. 100%.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the council? Councilman Vaughn,
Motion to receive.
Councilman Dinkins,
Second.
go ahead, Tyler.
Sucrum,
Yes.
Von Baron,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Dinkins,
Yes.
Warner,
Yes.
Scanlon,
Yes,
Lathrop,
Yes,
Jensen.
Yes,
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to unfinished business, ordinance 5681 for a change of zone from R rural to SR suburban residential for property located at the extension of Heatherwood Drive between Peterson Avenue and Brentwood Drive. This will be for final reading.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This item and the following item are related. It is for the change of zone and annexation for an area that we've known as the Donut Hole. Only a portion of this is going to be developed at this current point in time. We're very grateful that the developer has agreed to annex the entire area, to remove that donut hole and make it easier to provide services to the area. And with that, these are for final reading. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Thank you. Anybody here to speak on this item? In the public? Additional comments from council? Take a motion to hold final reading, Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion over final reading of an ordinance 5681.
Councilman Vaughn,
I will second.
Dinkins,
Yes.
Warner,
Yes.
Scanlon,
yes,
Lathrop.
yes,
Jensen,
Yes,
Sucrum,
Yes.
Von Baron,
Yes.
Vaughn.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
final reading.
Ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending ordinance number 5427 as it pertains to the zoning map to rezone the property located in the southwest quarter of section 18, township 17 north, range 9 east of the 6 p.m. Dodge County, Nebraska, and generally located at the extension of Heatherwood Drive between Peterson Avenue and Brentwood Drive, Dodge County, Nebraska, from R rural to SR suburban residential, providing for repeal of ordinances to conflict with, providing for severability, and providing an effective date on the final reading.
Please call the roll for the final vote.
Dinkins,
Yes.
Warner,
Yes.
Deanna,
yes,
Lathrop,
yes,
Jensen,
yes,
Sucrum.
Yes.
Von Baron.
Yes.
Vaughn.
Yes.
Ordinance is approved 8-0, Mayor.
Item 16 is ordinance 5682 for the annexation of property located at the extension of Heatherwood Drive between Peterson Avenue and Brentwood Drive. This is final reading.
Again, this is final reading on the annexation of this area. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff on this? Okay, any comments from the public? Okay, any additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion to hold final reading. Councilman Sucrum,
I'll make the motion on ordinance 5682.
Councilwoman Lathrop,
second,
Warner,
Yes.
Deanna,
yes,
Lathrop,
yes,
Jensen,
yes,
Sucrum.
Yes.
Von Baron,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Deacons.
Yes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
on final reading.
Ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, annexing by voluntary petition property located in the southwest quarter, section 18, township 17 north, range 9 east of the 6 p.m. Dodge County, Nebraska, and generally located at the extension of Heatherwood Drive between Peterson Avenue and Brentwood Drive and eastward to 12th Street, extending the corporate limits to include said real estate, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability and providing an effective date on final reading.
Call the roll.
Warner,
Yes.
Deanna,
yes,
Lathrop.
yes,
Jensen.
yes,
Sucrum.
Yes.
Von Baron.
Yes.
Vaughn.
Yes.
Dinkins.
Yes.
Ordinance is approved 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to item 17 is ordinance 5688 for the annexation of property located at 2420 East 23rd Street.
This is the final reading to annex the property that is the back part of Sid Dillon Cadillac, right behind the Rough House. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilman Super, did you have a question? No. Okay. Any questions? Anybody here from the public to speak on this item? Any additional comments from council? Councilman Warner?
If there are no additional comments, Mayor, I would make a motion that we approve the final reading of ordinance 5688.
Councilwoman Gannon?
Second,
Ganem,
yes.
Lathrop,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes,
Sukram,
Yes.
Von Baron,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Dinkins,
Yes.
Horner,
Yes.
motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Call the roll for the final vote. Well, we have final reading.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sorry.
An ordinance in the city of Fremont, Nebraska, annexing by voluntary petition property composed of a parcel of land located in the southeast quarter of section 12, being part of lots D and east of Howard Williams et al. Re-subdivision of the south half southeast quarter of section 12 and the north half northeast quarter of section 13, all in township 17 north range east of the 6 p.m. Dodge County, Nebraska, extending the corporate limits to include said real estate, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing an effective date and final reading.
Okay, now you can call the roll.
Ganem,
Yes.
Lathrop,
Yes.
Jensen,
yes,
Sukram,
Yes.
Von Baron,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Dinkins,
Yes.
Horner,
Yes.
ordinance is approved 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, now item 18 is ordinance 5694, annexation of property at the southwest corner of South Downing Street and the Highway 77 bypass. This is second reading.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, Jennifer Dan, Planning Director. This is the second reading to annex the property. It's known as the Rick's Farm property that is adjacent to the Hills Farm Lake development. In the future, there's an anticipation that there may be additional development in that area. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Any comments from the public on this? Any additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion to hold second reading. Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion to hold second reading on ordinance 5694.
Councilwoman Lathrop,
Second.
Lathrop,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes,
Sukram,
Yes.
Von Baron,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Dinkins,
Yes.
Horner,
Yes.
Ganem,
Yes.
motion carries 8-0.
second reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, annexing by voluntary petition property located in the northwest quarter of section 36 and southwest quarter of section 25, all in the township 17 north range 8 east of the 6 p.m. Dodge County, Nebraska, and generally located at the southwest corner of Highway 77 South Bypass and South Downing Street, extending the corporate limits to include said real estate, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing effective date on second reading.
Okay, moving on to new business. Item 19 is to review the S&P Global Ratings bond rating rationale report for the Department of Utilities. Jennifer Nab will do our report.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, Jennifer Nab, Finance Director, hello. This is a good news story. We have kept our rating. It is important to note that the city has its own bond rating. This is for the Department of Utilities. Because we have a coal fire plant, the highest rating we can achieve is AA negative. That is what we've been granted again by S&P Global Ratings. They have provided, they've published their report, and this is good news for us. As you know, we did a resolution a number of months back saying that, you know, in the next 18 months or so, it could be that we need to issue bonds. If we do decide as a community and city council and mayor to issue a bond, if we need to do that, it means we're going to get the cheapest financing that we can. So it's going to save us money. It also speaks to I think the community as a whole, they look at us in comparison to other communities. They look at our management, they look at our books. And it's nice to get that a second independent view of our utility and the strength of the financials of our utility. So I'm very pleased with it, and I hope you are as well, and I am here to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council? Anybody here to speak on this from the public? Okay. Any additional comments from council? There are none. I would take a motion to just receive the rating. Councilwoman Ganem,
I move we receive the S&P Global Rating Bond Report.
Councilman Von Baron,
Second,
Jensen,
Yes.
Sukram.
yes,
Von Baron,
yes,
Vaughn,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Warner,
Yes.
Ganem,
Yes,
Lathrop.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
item 20 is ordinance 5693, repealing the water rate ordinance number 5412 and adopting the new water rates. This would be for first reading.
Mayor, City Council, Jeff Shanahan, Utility General Manager. As with the other utility departments, we've been going through the rate study here over the last few months. We've already done sewer and we've done gas. This is the water rate study. The last rate study was done in 2017 with an increase in 2018. So we went into this knowing that we're probably gonna have something going on. There's a couple of projects that are playing a major role in the rate study. One of them is the construction of a horizontal well out at the well field. All of our wells are fairly old out there and they've pumped millions and millions and millions of gallons of water. So the early wells were put in the 70s. The most recent well was put in like 1991. It goes to the good maintenance that the water department guys do. They do an outstanding job on that. But we need to get some new wells in there and we need to be able to take these offline and get them some recovery time. So we're looking at a horizontal well. It'll produce between 10 and 15 million gallons a day. So it'll be a primary driver and then the other ones will be backups. The other item that we're having to look at and we're gonna start implementing is the lead pipe replacement rule in town. That'll require us, there is some grant funds available to us, but they're typically a loan. And then you get a portion of it, potentially you would get it paid back, but not the whole amount. So we'll have that debt that we'll have to cover on that also. So taking those projects along with all the other capital improvement plans and just the increase that we've had in our costs. The rate consultant evaluated and said overall, the entire system needs a 15% increase for all rate classifications. When you look at we basically have commercial and residential rates, and that's about all we have for the classifications. There's some differences in inside and outside cities where the outside city pays a little bit more. But when you compare the two classifications, they're fairly even in revenue and in consumption. So it's basically just an across the board increase for everybody on the water system.
Questions? Councilman Vaughn.
How many of these lead service pipes are we looking at?
Well, we've done it, I don't have that number right
Yeah,
off my
guesstimate.
head, but there's probably around 1,000 of them. So we're looking at about $8 million worth of expense when we get to it, somewhere in that range. It isn't just all lead, but if you have like a lead gooseneck and you got it to a galvanized pipe, then it's considered lead. So that whole service would get replaced.
Is that
And-
something we would undertake on a, chunk
Yes,
by
yeah,
chunk basis?
yeah.
Or is there a mandate to do others sooner than later?
2034, I think, is when it's got to be completed by, so we're in the process right now. We've identified them, we've submitted our inventory. I think I put that in the updates. We've submitted our inventory and now we are looking at developing a document. We've been working with legal to send out to the homeowners that are impacted on the fact that we're going to be replacing because we don't own the water line. It's owned by the homeowner. but we're gonna be replacing the water lines and we just need access to their homes to get into the meter.
Thank you.
Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, I just want to thank Jeff. We had a conversation earlier today. I was trying to get my hands around this. My reference was back in the gas rate that we passed, which softened the blow on residences and was a little harsher, but it was proportional to usage. And this one just being across the board, I guess that was the reason for my question. So I appreciate that explanation. It's just, it's one industrial business customers obviously have the chance to build these things into their cost structure very often, or usually they can be passed on. It's just more sensitive when it comes to a private residence, but Jeff got through, and it does make sense that legally we do have to be proportional and fair. So it is what it is.
Councilman Sukram.
Kind of hanging on what Councilman Vaughn hit on, but do we have any kind of mapping system at all to tell us?
What we did
Are we gonna create?
on the lead pipes, is that what you're talking about? On the lead pipes, what we did is we went through all of our permits that we've had since we had permits. So we went through all those and we identified them. We've then given those addresses to our GIS folks or Noah. And he's gonna put them on a GIS map. We're in the process right now of doing a water master plan and a water hydraulic study.
That was my next question.
Yep, we're doing the hydraulic study. We just had our first review of the data. We're gonna try to impose the lead pipe rule addresses onto the hydraulic study and see if we have a cluster of homes that need lead pipe rules and we have a section of water main that's causing us some grief on maintaining pressure. Maybe instead of just doing 10 slots in the street, we'll just replace that water main. And that'll fix two things. It'll allow us to build up that system a little bit better, plus get the houses hooked up a little bit easier.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Horner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two questions real quick, Jeff. One of them is, we're talking about water lines from the street into the house? Or are we talking about water lines that are running throughout the house?
Water lines from the street to the house,
Okay, so we could still have lead inside a house.
correct?
Okay,
We're required to replace the mains.
okay. Okay. So the second question then would be, what happens to the rest of that lead? That's not our problem?
No.
Okay,
And that's, that doesn't have any, I mean, the fact that we're replacing the mains is an impact on the rates.
and the fact that you may have lead main doesn't mean you still have lead in the house, because that could have already been replaced. Okay,
Councilwoman Ganem.
Those questions have been answered, and I do appreciate reliability that we have, and I think we have the best utilities in the state of Nebraska. We're so very fortunate. And I understand that we have to spend some monies to update and upgrade and meet requirements that are made of us. I also am looking at a 15% increase on our ratepayers over several years. And I'm concerned about some that have already contacted me, because even if it's $36 a year, for you and I, we can do that. But there are some people who are scraping by with inflation, with utilities going up and groceries going up. Our taxes sure took a hit again too. Our property taxes went up. The taxes that you pay, occupational taxes on items when you go out to eat, it really adds up. And some folks can't even go out to eat because it's so expensive for them. And we do have some pockets of individuals that are struggling. The other thing I see, or I've seen over the years, is that we have kept prices low, and we're still lower than most communities. And I think that's wonderful that we can be, is that we left 6 years or longer before we ever raised rates. And I would like to see smaller increases over longer periods of time. And I know our city has to do reserves, and utilities needs to probably shore up their reserves so that you have the funds to operate if there was an emergency or something came up. So that would be one thing, is to do on a regular basis, and I think you were going to address some of that part. But I didn't know if there was some, I know it's minuscule, it seems negligible, but to some people, it's not negligible, let me tell you. Is there a way to just do 10% a year and make it longer? I don't know if that's possible. Would you be able to come back at our next meeting if there's another way to at least reduce it some? And I know we say it's negligible, going from 15% to 10%. But sometimes it's not negligible. That makes a difference in someone buying some eggs over something else. And eggs went up too, by the way. So it's amazing how prices keep increasing and they're struggling.
Yeah, and you know, I understand that, our costs have gone up tremendously on this. Yeah, we plan on, you know, this is one thing we plan on doing is, put these on a regular cycle of 2 years that we look at them so that we don't have to come to you like this. But, you know, with no increase in almost 7 or 8 years, with the inflation the way it is and with the costs that go up with our, not only just our materials and our equipment and all that, but wages have gone up tremendously over those, of course, those years also. We certainly can look at it. We can do whatever council directs us to do to look at what that impact would be. You know, we still have to make ends meet. We still have to meet our reserves. Right now, with the way the reserve policy is, basically, we're meeting it using the utilities in general. Each fund is not probably meeting their requirements that we have in front of us. I know we're gonna work, and I had this discussion. We're gonna work on trying to come up with a policy and bring it to council for revision, so that when we get into situations like this, that we do have the flexibility to say, yeah, our whole utility is good. The water fund may be a little bit behind, but we're gonna work to build that back up instead of not meeting the requirements that we have.
So I would like to see if you can come up with another, just what would happen if 10% per year? Even that last year where you say 5%.
Jen?
I mean, I would like to see us go back and see how would it impact if you had,
Yeah, we would have
Lowered it
to,
to
we have to run the
10%.
analysis and look at it.
okay,
Can you, who did the rate study or
John
what's the
Crafty.
process to do that and what?
What we do is when we do the rate study, what we do is we send him our capital improvement plan. And then we have to tell him about what we think, and I mean, he's guessing on the interest rates. I think we assumed a 5% interest rate for a 20-year term on the bonds. And then he looks at our operating expenses, and then he looks at our amount of revenues. And basically, he just looks at what it's gonna cost us to maintain the system, and we're already gonna be running in the negative. And any more that we run in the negative just means we're gonna need more and more to come back the next time. But at some point, we've got to turn it around. And it's not, you know, it's, I don't know where we can do any study and look at it, but it's gonna require, it's math.
well, it's still gonna ultimately be the same. It's just that it reduces it some.
Well, it puts us farther
longer
behind this
period.
year, it puts us longer to catch up.
I know it does.
Yeah, and that's, we're just putting it down the road to catch up.
Okay, what do we do to help people that are really struggling?
We don't. We have United Way, those folks that we direct people to. But the utilities doesn't have a program to help people that can't pay their bills.
And what happens? We turn the water off on them
Point
in
of
the
order.
middle of winter? I'm sorry. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Does anybody else? have
thank
any
you.
Comments on this? Councilman Dinkins?
Thanks, Mike.
The only thing, if, you know, reading in here that they did a sensitivity case.
Mhm.
If that's needed, you're already looking at another 10%
Yeah, I know.
and another 5%.
Going
So
forward.
you're at a moot point then that last year, if you went from, you'd still be at 15%. If that's needed, I mean, we don't know. The only other thing I'd also bring up is I know you're looking at doing these more often. I would just ask. You make them cyclical, so they're not all the utilities are on the same year.
Right, and that's what we've tried to, in this year, well, sewer was bad, we had to do something with that one. What we tried to do with gas, and that's why we pushed it in sooner, is we wanted to get the increase in before it hit the winter season, so we don't hit the customer with an increase in gas and a high demand period. You know, so, and we try to do it in line with as projects come online, you know, we don't want to. If we're meeting obligations, we're fine, but we don't want to be anticipating that a project's gonna come up and be billing for it ahead of time. So we try to do it as projects roll on too. But when we try to do it in 2 years, it takes quite a bit of time just to get them to do the study, and so you do 4 utilities over 2 years, you're almost gonna be doing another one fairly soon.
Any other members of council that have any comments? Any comments from the public? Any additional comments from council? Councilman Vaughn?
No additional comments really, other than, yes, it is unfortunate to have that significant of an increase, but we're kind of paying for sins of the past here. And we have to catch up and be modern and to the point of the lead pipes, we got to make our community safe too. So make a motion to approve.
Councilwoman Ganna?
I'll second.
This is first reading, so.
Sukram,
Yes.
Von Baron,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Horner,
Yes.
Ganem,
Yes,
Lathrop,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes,
motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
First reading.
An ordinance in the city of Fremont, Nebraska, establishing rates and minimum charges for water consumed by customers and charges for services rendered by the municipal water system, providing when the rates, minimum charges and charges are effective, repealing ordinance number 5412, and all of their ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance, and providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect on first reading.
Now moving on to item 21, which is the review of the fiscal year 2025 budget growth analysis, and we'll have Jen Nab again. It's your night.
indeed. It is.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, Jennifer Nab. Finance Director. So we looked at we did a 2-year budget. This is going into year 2. And for year 2, when the council approved the budget, we assumed a 3.55% growth in there. The actual growth, the lid and growth, when you add it together, is 4.41. So growth of 1.41 plus the 3% that we're allowed to increase our expenses with inflation, etc. When we compared the budget for year 2 with the additional growth, and looked at what that would do to our property tax request, we saw that on the $6.3-ish million, it was really only a difference of about $52K. So, by the time the county takes their 1% commission out, to go through the effort of revising the budget, holding a public hearing, and the cost of doing all that with the just small amount it would increase. In addition, in this economy and in this political environment and what's coming, we are not recommending that we do a adjustment. In addition, in the packet, with the new LB 34, I tried to figure out, even though they haven't provided us, they've said what the index is, but they haven't said exactly how to calculate that year over year growth. And while I thought maybe that would be easy, I found two, tables. One is from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, and I wanted to just show you, with the new law coming, even though we don't have the guidance yet, what the growth percentages look like over the last 10 years. And then I also found one of the Federal Reserves who take that same data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis and they annualize it and seasonally adjust it. And the reason I wanted to include this as well is in an article, the city of Omaha quoted the 5.94. And so they were clearly using that second table. The Omaha quoted the 5.77. I called the state and spoke with some folks there. Again, they don't have exactly what it is, but they were quoting the up. So I provided both. And while over the last 2 years, 8%, 5.77%. But if you look back in some of the prior years, there is quite a difference between the two tables. But the point I want to make, and there is a point, is that the kind of 3% lid that we have, and when you're looking here, the last 6 or 7 years under the new rule, I think we would be okay. When I look at the valuation increase of total taxable value of 2.8 billion, and you compare that to prior year, if you take the tax requirement that we have in our budget and you divide that and try and calculate the levy, it means that by not doing this amendment, and even if we did the amendment correctly, the levy, our portion of the property tax is going to go down for our constituents. So the amount that we paid last year, if it was, if I'm paying $1.80 against the property of my, value of my home, our portion is like 16%-ish of it. And it's, call it 25 or 27 cents. This will go down a few pennies. Now that means because their valuation has gone up, it could mean that their property taxes still increase. But we're recommending here that we reduce our portion and we don't ask for more. And I think speaking to Sally, what you were asking about, I think this will help to offset some other increases. I talked longer than I wanted to.
Okay. Councilman Horner.
Well, that's good news.
Councilman Vaughn.
I'd say that it's kind of commendable to come in that close to your projections.
Yes.
And
Jody is impressive.
it's,
I was impressed with the finance and accounting team as well.
that's pretty awesome, and I think our path forward is going to be pretty apparent here shortly.
Any other comments at this point? Okay. Any comments from the public on this? Any additional comments from council? So just to be clear, because there's no additional action that's required because it was in the 2-year budget with that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from council? Again, this is just a review. Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to item 22. Which is an executive session to discuss real estate matters, and Tyler is passing out the language.
Yeah, one person's got it. We don't.
So I would take a motion to go into executive session. Councilman Jensen.
I move to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing real estate matters and for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest.
Councilman Sukram.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to go into executive session for the first purpose of discussing real estate matters and for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest. Was there any discussion? The pending motion is to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing real estate matters and for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest. Roll call vote, please.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Horner,
Yes.
Hannah,
Yes.
Lathrop.
Yes.
Jensen.
Yes.
Ingram.
Yes.
Von Baron.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
A motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing real estate matters and for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest has been approved. Discussion will be limited to discussing real estate matters. No official actions or votes will be taken during the executive session. And we will now move to the Pinnacle Bank boardroom, which is just out here to the hallway to the left. All right, Councilman Vaughn,
Make the motion to come out of executive session.
Councilman Jensen,
I will second.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Warner,
Yes.
Ganem,
Yes,
Lathrop. Yes. Jensen,
Yes,
Supram,
Yes.
Von Baron.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
and item 23 is to authorize the issuance of a check to Big Iron Realty Trust Account for standard non-refundable down payment. Staff report from our city administrator.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Jody Sanders, City Administrator. We're asking for a motion to authorize staff to issue a check for $75,000. It is designed to be an earnest deposit, if only if we would be a successful bidder on property that we might be bidding on in the near future. Should we not be the successful bidder, the check would then be voided. And I'll take any questions.
Questions for staff? Any comments? Okay, I'd take a motion.
So moved.
Councilman Vaughn, move. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Warner,
Yes.
Ganem,
yes,
Lathrop.
Yes.
Jensen,
yes,
Supram.
Yes.
Von Baron,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Councilman Jensen,
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Warner,
Yes.
Ganem.
Yes.
Lathrop.
Yes.
Jensen.
Yes.
Supram. Von Baron,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
we are adjourned. Have a good night.
I thought that went pretty smooth for the.
Yeah.
A little round table talk, right?
That does look like an
And
owl.
we'll get it all figured out, then we'll be back over and have to learn over again.
We'll have new buttons.